When I was a kid, one of my favorite things to do was go to the video store. Now, some of you might be too young to have experienced this with the advent of Redbox and the rise of streaming services like Netflix and Hulu. And if that is the case, I am genuinely sorry that you missed out on this experience. Because back then, if you wanted a movie or especially a video game and you didn't feel like buying it, you couldn't just download a demo or watch someone play it on Twitch or YouTube. Video stores were the place to go. I was visiting a good friend the other day, and he had a surprise for me. We drove out, and he took me to a still functioning video store near where he lives. Now, I've been in plenty of video stores since my childhood, but those were chain stores that were still holding out. The ones that hadn't quite gone the way of Blockbuster and now Family Video, which is just about all gone. This was one of those mom and pop stores of our youth. And it was a completely different experience. One that's kind of hard to properly convey if you've never experienced it. When I walked through those doors, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia that was deep and intense. The simple, unassuming rectangle of a building was filled with tall wooden shelves where VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray all mingled uncharacteristically. I think those old stores, there was a very specific smell, and I think it came from the old wooden shelves, usually carpeted floor. When that scent hit my nose, it was such a powerful memory. I love it. It's fantastic. And sure, there was a shelf of new releases along one wall that was mostly Blu-ray, but the older section was this glorious melange of formats, ages apart. Like I said, from VHS to Blu-ray, all side by side. I was blown away. There were also the unfortunate shelves that faced the windows, the movie boxes bleached and battered by years of constant sunlight, a staple for any good video store worth its salt. My friend and I, having spent a considerable amount of time in our younger days perusing video stores, just wandered around, sharing memories, laughing with one another, and just feeling like kids again. The video store was always a magical place for me. As a kid, I didn't own many movies. We really were only allowed to watch Disney movies. And while I did enjoy them as a kid, and I still do when I watch them with my niece and nephews, a trip to the video store was like a portal to another world. The sheer amount of choices was a sensory overload of information. There were 3 different non-chain video stores near where I grew up that I remember going to. Video Circle, Video Events, and DJ's 4-Star Video. I have a vivid memory of the precise layout of each one of those buildings. I probably couldn't tell you where each section was in all of them. I could draw a map of at least 2 of them. I could definitely take you to the horror section and the video game section in any one of them. Video Circle was the first store that I remember going to. They had all the VHS boxes on shelves with little hooks that they would have tags on. If the tag was there, it meant that it was available. You would bring it up to the counter and they would exchange it for a videotape. I always remember I loved that. I would grab the tag off the hook, bring it up to the counter. I could barely even see up to, over the counter, but when you get up there, you could catch a glimpse into the workroom. And I'm sure it wasn't quite as impressive as I'm remembering it, but it was, these gigantic shelves, floor to ceiling, just filled with VHS tapes. It was a veritable forest of black plastic rectangles. The average trip would result in a family-friendly film for all of us, possibly an action or drama film for just my parents, Horror was never on the menu, and I was not allowed in the horror section. So naturally, that is where I gravitated most times. I eventually figured out the most effective way of looking at the horror movies without actually going into the horror section, which would prompt my dad to yell at me, was to go to the section that was adjacent to it, which I believe was drama, and just kind of sneak glances over at the boxes as I browsed the drama films. I'm sure I was fooling everyone as a small child interested in drama. I may not have been allowed to watch them, but I was drawn to the covers, even though they gave me continual nightmares. I remember a few times just walking through there, just brazenly go straight to the horror section and do a pass before anybody noticed, and seeing the covers for like Leprechaun and Critters and Nightmare on Elm Street. It just always creeped me out so much. There were 3 covers in particular that shook me as a child. Those were Night of the Demons 2, Trilogy of Terror, and Jason Goes to Hell. If pressed, I could probably show you where each of those was located in any store, because every time I saw them, they just scared the crap out of me. Now, flash forward to today, and I'm a horror fanatic. Sorry, Mom and Dad. I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of your fault because you didn't let me watch them, but we don't really have to get into it. Lastly, and what would become most important, was the video game section. Now, there had to be some overlap between Video Circle and DJ's 4-Star Video, because I remember renting Nintendo 64 games from Video Circle, but I rented Sega games from DJ's. I'm thinking that Video Circle just didn't have video games until the N64 came out. So it's hard to tell the exact timing. I don't know. Memory is a tricky thing, but I'm doing my best. If I recall, the same friend that I recently accompanied to the video store was the one who introduced me to DJ's 4-Star Video and also video events. I think those were the 2 that he and his family frequented, and so I passed along the information to my family. Going to DJ's was great for 2 reasons. This was the first place that I actually did rent video games, and those were Sega Genesis games. But the best memory that I have is going there with my dad once a week. I think on a Wednesday. I'd have to ask him, though I doubt he'd remember. We would go once a week. We would rent 1 James Bond movie and 1 Abbott and Costello movie until we watched through every single one of them. James Bond was one of the first exceptions to the stricter upbringing when it came to movies that I remember. But this instilled a love for James Bond that persists to this very moment. I cannot wait to go see No Time to Die. I just love James Bond so much. Video events was also a standout because of the memory associated with getting a membership there. I had gone a few times with that friend and his family, and I just saw them give their phone number and then they rented a movie. So that's what I thought was the only requirement to rent a movie. So I remember going with my dad and picking up pizza and bringing it back home for dinner. And I begged him to please stop at video events so I could rent Mission Impossible for the Nintendo 64. He agreed. We stopped. It's pouring rain. We go inside. We get the game, bring it up to the counter, and he has to set up a whole account. He needs to give his name, the address, the phone number, the whole works. And he was just so irritated with me. The pizza's getting cold. He's got to go back and forth in the rain. It's just really sticks with me. When I reached driving age, video events was a big stop for me. High school was when I really got into movies, and I had a voracious appetite and a yearning to just consume everything I could get my hands on. I couldn't help myself. So many classics, horror, sci-fi, drama, anything I had read about or I had seen on a list of great movies, or I read the review of it, like a recent release, anything that piqued my interest or things that I felt I should watch, I watched it. I've consumed as much as I could. Years later, video events moved locations, and I actually ended up working there for several years. At the time, it was a dream job for me. Someone recently obsessed with movies. But of course, I had to move on, and they didn't last too many years after I left. When I started there, it was already at the brink of extinction. Netflix had just started getting really big, and I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did, but it's a small town, and people love their videos. Especially older people who are not willing to make the jump to streaming or getting their movies delivered by Netflix. Now, I think it's important for me to say that I am by no means the type of person to resist change or the march of progress, especially concerning technological advancements. And while I am fully invested in Netflix, Hulu, Prime Video, whatever, any streaming service you can think of, in my humble opinion, one of the biggest losses to our culture and sense of community is the disappearance of video stores. As someone who has a love of and passion for collecting physical media, the video store will always be a special thing for me. I don't think we should move backwards in technology. I'm not a Luddite. I don't refuse to learn new things. But I'm a huge sucker for nostalgia, and I still harbor a sense of unease about a strictly digital collection. I have gotten a bit better in recent years. I will buy video games digitally through Steam or from the Nintendo Store or PlayStation. I've moved almost exclusively to just streaming music. But for big releases of video games, bigger titles, I like to collect the physical copies, as you can see here. My CRT TV and retro consoles, my VCR and VHS collection, turntable and vinyl are all just as important to me as my Blu-rays or my digital library, my streaming library, anything that I do digitally. They're the same importance to me. I don't think necessarily that the tech was better back then. You could make a case for a CRT with retro consoles, but I don't think that's what makes these things so important to me. Rather, it's the memories that are attached to them. Like my video game videos, the importance falls on the stories and the memories that I associate with these things, just as much as the game itself. Obviously, that's not the only thing, but it's a big part of what draws me to these things. It's easy. The older we get, and I'm starting to notice this as I'm getting up there in years, to be drawn into that bitter longing for the good old days, when statistically, each new day is better than the one that came before it. But we often look at the past through rose-colored glasses. This is not healthy or helpful, but I think if we recognize this fact, we can idolize the past. We can hold it in high regard, but within reason. We should remember and appreciate all the things that brought us to where we are today, but we should always strive forward and continue to improve our lives and the lives of everyone else around us every day and in every way we can. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. I know it's a slight deviation from what I normally post and what's going to be the main format of the channel, but after visiting that video store and just remembering all those things and having all those memories come rushing back to me, I just felt moved to make a little remembrance of video stores. There's so many things that I remember and appreciate and love from when I was younger that just don't exist anymore. And I thought a little remembrance would be nice. I genuinely hope you enjoyed yourself with this video. I enjoyed making it. Drop a like or a comment. Let me know your favorite memory of going to the video store, whether it was when you were real young or if you were a little bit older. Let me know if you've never been to a video store. I'd like to know. It's interesting. Consider subscribing and sharing this video with your friends. It means the world to me. I am the Darknumenorean, and until next time, keep gaming, keep rocking, and thanks for watching.